You know a Joan Miró painting when you see it. The distinctive shapes and colors, the dreamy quality unlike any other Surrealist work. Miró rejected classification throughout his life. Though today he is seen as one of the most important Surrealist artists of the movement, he refused the title in his lifetime. So let's talk about him. Born in 1893 to a goldsmith and watchmaker father, he grew up in the Gothic neighborhood of Barcelona, where he was interested in art from a young age. He first enrolled in drawing lessons at age 7, but it was always known that he would attend business school at his father's wishes. Though when he enrolled at age 14, he continued his art education as well. He began a short-lived career as a clerk, but soon suffered a nervous breakdown, saying later, "I was demoralized and suffered from a serious depression. I fell really ill and stayed 3 months in bed." Miró would struggle with depression his entire life. The best treatment he found was creating his art. Miró abandoned his career as a clerk, much to his father's chagrin, and charged head-on into his life as an artist. By 1918, he was given a solo exhibition at Galeries Dalmau, where his art was ridiculed and defaced. This early work is what is known as his Fauvism period, and looks nothing like the work he would later become known for. He was inspired by the work of Vincent van Gogh and Paul Cézanne, which is clear. When I look at this work, I see a young artist finding his voice, mimicking and developing his taste, and the striking use of color and shapes hints at what is to come. Miró moved to Paris in 1920, where he began his magical realism period. These works, inspired by Cubism, are still representational, only occasionally emphasizing or distorting an element, like the enlarged feet in The Farmer's Wife. But Surrealism was taking over the insular art community he was a part of, and his colleagues found this work too representational and encouraged him towards his more abstracted style. From 1922 to 1924, Miró honed his style into the signature look that we've come to recognize him for. In Catalan landscape, The Hunter, we can see the almost cryptically distilled forms, the expressive and organic shapes. And in Pastoral, we see the restrained color palettes typical of his style. For the remainder of the 1920s, Miró refined his style into an iconography unto itself, a pictographic language of symbols and shapes that, once the viewer knows what to look for, are decodable. In fact, French author Raymond Queneau coined the term Miroglyphs for them in his 1949 essay. Miró, like other Dadaists and Surrealists, used the technique of automatism to create many of his early works. This is a technique where the artist submits to their subconscious mind as a method of creation. Dali achieved this through sleep deprivation, André Breton through writing as quickly as possible, and Miró through a kind of waking dream state. When describing the creation of Harlequin's Carnival, he said, "I'd come home to my Paris studio in the Rue Blomet at night. I'd go to bed, and sometimes I hadn't any supper. I saw things, and I jotted them down in a notebook. I saw shapes on the ceiling." Throughout the 1930s, Miró grew to prominence, even gaining representation in the United States by Pierre Matisse, the youngest son of Henri Matisse. Nepo baby alert. Miró made designs for ballet sets and many works on paper, which culminated in Constellations, a series of 23 paintings on paper that depict celestial imagery. Art historians and critics deem this series as one of the greatest achievements of his career, and it's easy to see why. Chocked full of detail and depth, these works are captivating. The longer you look, the more you see. Miró began the series while living on the coast of Normandy and fled to Catalonia during the Nazi invasion with the first 10 of them tucked in a portfolio under his arm. He finished the series in Mallorca while World War II raged. Miró had a love-hate relationship with painting, and with painters, much preferring the company of poets like André Breton and Ernest Hemingway. His quote of wanting to assassinate painting is often repeated, and he later expounded on the subject by saying, "The only thing that interests me is the spirit itself, and I only use the customary artist tools, brushes, canvas, paints, in order to get the best effects. The only reason I abide by the rules of pictorial art is because they're essential for expressing what I feel, just as grammar is essential for expressing yourself. Miró first experimented with assemblages in the 1920s, but returned to sculpture with a vengeance in the 1940s, first with ceramic and later with bronze. Miró's sculptures, heavily influenced by the traditional Mallorcan folk art of Surrealist, are some of my favorite works by him. To see his exaggerated organic shapes rendered in space is a delight. I especially like his large-scale sculptures from the 1960s and 70s, my favorite of which is Personage from 1970. Miró's later career is defined by his continued branching out into new mediums. He created over 250 illustrated artist books, stained glass windows and ceramic murals, ephemeral window paintings, and in the 1970s he collaborated with fellow Catalonian artist Josep Roya to create tapestries that incorporated elements of both their styles. Their massive World Trade Center tapestry weighed 4 tons and was the most expensive work of art destroyed in the September 11th attacks. In the last years of his life, Miró wrote about the possibility of gas sculptures and 4-dimensional painting, and the most monumental of his sculptures were installed in Chicago and Barcelona. Miró died at age 90 in 1983. His pictorial style, which seems modern no matter the era, is truly timeless. What's your favorite Miró piece? Do you consider him a surrealist despite his protestations? Let me know, and thanks for watching.